Hello and welcome to the Car Care channel, and welcome to part 2 of how Toyota and Lexus evaporative emission systems work. In part 1, we talked about the very basics of what is the evaporative emission system. We talked about the different types of evaporative emission system briefly, and then we dove in the late type intrusive system. In this video, we're going to be focused on today's evaporative emission system. We're going to talk about a system called LEV2 and LEV2 with a vacuum pump. This is the most common evaporative emission system that you're going to see in today's cars up to 2025. We're going to go through it in detail, and then last, toward the end of the video, we're going to talk about some advanced diagnosis tips if you are doing some repairs at a technician level, at a very advanced DIY level. There are some tips that I'll share with you that will help you a lot with diagnosis right after this. Let's talk about the LEV2 system, the original one. This started right around 2004, and I hope at this point you have watched part 1 of this video, because that's when we talked about the original system of the EVAP system. This system is basically the same thing, they just improved on it. So let's throw it out real quick. We got our fuel tank as usual. We got our canister. We got our engine. And we do have a line to purge with a valve. This is purge. This is where things are different though. Remember the previous system where we had our canister closed valve all the way at the air filter, and that's how it drew fresh air? They realized, wait a second, why are we running this line all the way across the entire car to come to the front, exposing all this line and all this mess for all kinds of leaks? Why don't we just take this valve that was drawing fresh air from the air filter, just bring it right on the canister and make it one unit? So now, on the canister, you have the vent valve or the fresh air valve or the canister closed valve, and this guy just takes its air from the area surrounding the filler neck, right around it on the outside. But wait a second, this is going to draw debris and all kinds of stuff. They actually put a filter here. It's a non-serviceable filter, but that just any debris, it'll catch it and we'll be okay. So now this is our vent valve. Works exactly the same way. And we still have our valve that has that spring that connects to the canister for when we refuel. So let's run through this, because things have changed here. You notice there is an absence of components. Here's what they do. When you refuel the car, you're putting fuel here. These fumes will push this valve, go to the canister, and then this will open and allow the air to escape. That's refueling. What about purge, when we're trying to empty this canister out? We're gonna open the vent valve, open the purge valve. The vacuum of the engine will pull the vapors, and as the vapors are being pulled out, fresh air is coming in to fill that space. But that all is great. Talk about the test, because that's the number one thing. That's the most important thing. Again, time and pressure. That's the most important thing for the computer to watch. It's going to start the test by purging a little bit to empty the canister, and then it's going to actually close the vent valve. So we're going to put a close. This isolates the system from outside. It's going to open the purge valve. This purge valve is going to pull a vacuum across the canister. But wait a second, what about the fuel tank? Well, this is where they made some changes, because this valve When you apply vacuum to it from the other side, opens. So now instead of having that bypass between the two, that whole mess, we kind of made things smaller. Combine this here, less components, re-engineered this valve so we don't have to have that bypass between the two. So now when you draw a vacuum on the canister, you're also drawing a vacuum through the tank. So you basically bypassed a step, kept things smaller. Here's what the computer is going to see. First, it's going to open this vent valve to normalize, so you can establish your baseline. Then it's going to close the vent, seal the system, turn on the purge. When that happens, you're going to draw a vacuum. Again, the vacuum will go down, down, down to a predetermined point. And then we're going to close the purge. You have effectively, with these two closed, you have sealed the entire system. Then it's going to watch this guy. It should eventually start going up, obviously, because we're only detecting leaks up to 0.5 millimeter and 0.020 inch. The rest is exactly the same. If this never comes down, just kind of drips down a little bit and stays there, we have a large leak. If this goes down but doesn't quite reach the point that the computer knows that we have a leak smaller than that, it's a small leak. If this almost barely reaches it but it doesn't, we have a very small leak. If this line never goes down, we have a problem with the purge. If this line stays completely flat, we may have a problem with the purge valve not opening, not doing anything, but we could also have a problem with the vent valve being stuck open, where you are pulling a vacuum, but fresh air is just coming in and going through. But the computer can actually know that, because when you open the purge valve, two things it will watch. It will watch this. When you open the purge valve and you send vacuum here, even though this is open, it'll still see a small ripple. Like, it'll see a change in pressure. And that's how it knows that my purge valve is working, but I think my vent is not happening. Or we have a big leak. But the way it's going to know we have a problem with the vent or we have a large leak is going to watch what comes through this line, because the engine is running. If it all of a sudden starts seeing vapors coming in at high concentrations, meaning your fuel trim just changed because basically we're introducing more gas to the engine, that means that we don't have a leak. The vent valve is open, meaning when you're pulling, it's pushing all the fumes through, kind of like when we're doing a purge. That's when it sees like, I don't think we have a leak here. I think there's a problem with the vent. It's going to set a code stating vent valve malfunction. Doesn't know what's going on. I mean, this valve could be stuck, this could be broken, the canister could be open at the top and it just happens to pull all the fumes. It doesn't know what's going on. It's going to tell you what it sees. This system is possibly the simplest evaporative emission system to diagnose, because there isn't much going on. You test this valve, you test this valve. If this line is good and this line is good, what do you think the problem is? You only have two components to watch for. You don't have 17 lines going to the front and 17 million valves between the two. We combine things. Now, here is the other thing. There is one new issue that can happen with the system. Let's say we are just normally purging the system. We are not doing anything, testing or monitor or anything. We are just doing a purge operation. Basically, the computer is going to open this valve, the engine is running, this vacuum will pull all the fumes through, and then fresh air will come in. I'm telling you this because this is actually a problem you will see. All of a sudden, the computer is always watching this when we do any EVAP system operation. When we do a purge, this is how that's going to look like. We're here. This is going to have a little dip and kind of ripple, then it stays the same because we're just pulling air in. There's no vacuum. When we do a purge, if all of a sudden we do a purge, operation normal, this kind of just does this deal. Goes into a deep vacuum. What does that mean? I'll give you a second to think about this. This means that my vent is closed. It's going to immediately know this vent valve is not working because I am not commanding it on. It's open and we have vacuum. This could be due to two things. This valve itself is stuck closed, or a more common one that we've seen, this filter is clogged. Meaning this valve is working, purge is working and everything, but we have a clog here. Well, it's the same thing as if the valve is closed. And you know what the number one thing that clogs this filter? Insects. They'll come in here and they'll congregate around the filter and have all their family over there and they'll clog it up. This filter usually is a big black box you'll see under the car. And we're not gonna take a look at a Lev 2 car underneath it, but we're gonna look at a Lev 2 with a vacuum pump, which we're gonna talk about next, and you will see that filter. Now let's switch gears and talk about the most important system. The system that if you go to your brand new car, 2025, it will have this system. This is called Lev 2 with a vacuum pump. Let's start with the basics. This is your fuel tank. Everything is normal there. This is your engine. This is the charcoal canister. Looks normal, except we have a little extension here. Talk about that extension in a moment. Let's talk about our basics. We have purge line, purge valve to the engine. Pretty normal. That is always there. This is the purge. Then they moved the vapor recovery for the filling on the canister. So now this guy that has like a spring moved on the canister. This is now connected to the fuel tank. And I'm going to share with you something. This is actually available in the other systems as well. Over here, you actually have a little float. Meant to, when you go to the fuel tank, to the gas station, you fill up your tank, it clicks, and you keep going and going and going and going. So this will close up and won't let liquid fuel go in. And this is, let's mark the fuel. Everything seems very normal so far, until we get to the most important part, this one. This is called a pump module. This is also part of the charcoal canister. Let's talk about one thing. From it, you have air filter. This is your fresh air line, if you would. This just hangs around right here, right by the filler neck, exposed, open. This line goes in to multiple things. You have a very big vent valve. This vent valve is a rotary valve now, not just a valve that open and close. It can move and close entire passages. This just connects it right here. But this valve has the ability to move this and completely close it. A little bit more involved. But in addition to that, we have a small line that goes here. You have a pump here, a vacuum pump. And then this connects here. Then you have another thing. I know this is going to look strange because we kind of ran out of space. There is an orifice here. That looks like a complicated contraption. Here's what they realized. Wait a second. We're only able to test the system when the engine's running. And we are only able to test the system to a predetermined, remember when the vacuum, when we talked about it in the past, how the computer sees it? It's going to start here, then when it pulls the vacuum, it's going to go to a predetermined point, and then starts going up slowly. Well, what happens when you're at the top of the mountain, or you are at the lowest point in the planet? That predetermined point is kind of the average. And that's not good enough, flat out. Because they discovered that some of these cars, if you live in certain areas, high altitude, low altitude, whatever the case may be, the atmospheric pressure changes and now this becomes irrelevant. So you may pass an emission test, pass an EVAP test, assuming we have a leak. We don't have a leak larger than 0.5 millimeters. But you actually do. So here's what they did. How do we calibrate our graph? Here's what's going to happen. We're going to jump straight into the test because purge exactly the same, everything else exactly the same. But until we run to a test, this test will run with the engine off. Approximately 5 hours after the engine stops. This is with the one you hear running in your car after you walk into it in the garage. You hear a buzzing sound. Here's what's going to happen. The computer will move this valve to close all the passages. And then it's going to run this is a little vacuum pump. It's going to create vacuum. This pump, when all of these passages over here, when this vent valve moves and closes everything, it's gonna have only one passage to go through, which is this one. The vacuum will start here, go here, and pass through this. This is actually routed through and connected to the vent. This little orifice is a calibration. This orifice is calibrated exactly, it is exactly 0.5 millimeters or 0.020 size opening. So here's what the computer is going to do. When we start the test, it's going to close the vent valve and keep it closed the entire time because we're not doing anything because the engine is off. That's irrelevant. We're going to use the purge valve to test it, but we're not going to use it for the test to run the test. Here's what's going to happen. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to self-calibrate. What are we calibrating? We're starting right here. As soon as you close this vent valve and turn on the pump, and this is going to go through this orifice, we're going to go straight down and hold. Now the computer is going to look, aha, this is my reference point right here. This is what I need to see to make sure that my system is not leaking. This will change based on atmospheric pressure and many other factors. But now the computer has the ability to know, in my current conditions, what would a 0.5 millimeter leak look like pressure-wise? Very smart. So, once it establishes that point, it's going to move this valve back to its original position, which is right here. And then we're going to have a little passage that now this vacuum pump is going to be able to pull the entire system into a vacuum, including this line, the canister, the fuel tank, the filler neck, the gas, everything. But this vent will also close. It's going to close this line internally. It's a little bit complicated to draw it exactly what it does, but it's like a rotary valve that can switch and change the direction. It's going to close the vent line that goes to fresh air, and then this vacuum pump is going to draw the entire system into a vacuum. Here's what it's going to do. Here's what that's going to look like. You're going to start, let's start this from the beginning. We're going to start kind of pressure normalize, normal pressure. We're going to run our test. This will drop like this. And then once we open it up again to the entire system, it's actually going to go up and starts going down slowly. Here's what the computer wants to do. It does not want this number to get to here. It actually wants to see it go below that number. It's going to kind of push the system beyond the spec. Because if you're able to, this is just simple physics, I suppose. If you're able to pull a vacuum below 0.5 millimeters, we don't have any leaks. Let's just say that. Flat out, there's no leaks. Because if we just pull a vacuum to this point and stop, yeah, great, we know. But a better way is because you have a continuous source, you can run it forever. If you pull below, you have no leaks, 100%. That's what it's going to do. Then, once it does that, okay, I have no leaks, I know my purge valve is sealed, my vent valve is working, everything else is great. But we didn't really test the purge valve. Does it open? We don't know that. It's actually going to open the purge valve and it's going to see how this doesn't just go like that. That is not good, because the purge valve will take a few moments to pull all that vacuum through. So it's going to see like a slow rise back to normal. Let's talk about problems. This system is extremely simple to diagnose because there isn't much to it. You have 4 components: fuel tank, canister, which contains this entire thing, air filter, and purge valve. That's it. That's all we got. There's one line going to the rear. That's it. One line going to the fuel tank, and that's it. Extremely simple. They cannot be more simpler than this. And the best part is, this is heavily computer controlled. You can do this yourself, or you can let the computer do it live in front of you. And it will make a judgment and tell you the results. Super high tech and super sophisticated. Let's run through some scenarios. We're starting out here. You overfilled the car. Previous owner overfilled the car. Customer overfilled the car. This orifice has all kinds of debris on it. Or it's broken. Let's start with all kinds of debris first. As soon as you start, you're just going to do this. Because this is a blocked passage. And it's just going to keep pulling vacuum until the computer sees that you have arrived at the maximum vacuum this pump can pull, which is way beyond what that orifice should be. Wait a second. This is not good. We got a problem here. It's going to throw a bunch of random codes because it doesn't know what's going on. It could tell you the pump is out of limits, the orifice is out of limits, because it has no idea what's going on. Except I see this, I don't like it. That's one problem you could have. Another problem. We turn on this pump, this vacuum pump. Radio silence. There's nothing going on. We're flat line. Well, my pump didn't do anything. Or, this is another one, if something is broken here, you're just pulling air from outside. You're not going to pull a vacuum. That pump, I mean, it's strong, but it's not that strong. So, this is another scenario. Another one is, we start with our test, it pulls what it needs to do, it just stays there. When you turn the vent valve up, it just stays there. This vent valve is stuck. Let's run another one. one. We did our test. This came down, went back up. It just stays there. When you turn the vent valve up, it just stays there. This vent valve is stuck. Let's run another one. We did our test. This came down, went back up. It just stays there. This vent valve is stuck. Let's run another one. We did our test. This came down, went back up. When we move our vent valve, we're supposed to see kind of a droop down as we pull vacuum beyond this point. But if this is flat, vent valve didn't do its job. Or if you see a small ripple, we have a leak, large leak. If this pulls down to here, but it couldn't pull it more, this is a small leak. If it was able to get really close to it, but not quite, that's a very small leak. But if we went beyond, we're good, because we went beyond our reference. Then it's going to turn on the purge valve. Well, if we just got to a point in this flat line at the end, and when the purge valve is on, we have a problem here. That's how that looks like. But a normal one will be, it will pull a vacuum beyond our point, and then it's going to turn on the purge valve. This will start going up again. And in the end, and this is something that they will do, it will double check this one more time, just in case. So it's going to close the vent valve. We're going to pull vacuum through the orifice. It's going to do this again at the end, just to make sure that our values are the same and this is actually lower than it. One more time, because they're trying to be really accurate. Folks, I'm just going to say one thing. This system is groundbreaking for EVAP systems. That's why modern cars don't actually have a lot of EVAP problems, because this system is amazing, flat out. It runs its own test. It's very computer heavy. It can check things. It can do a lot of stuff. And the best part about it is there's not a lot of components. The more components you have, the more you're going here and here and here, and there's 17 million places. This doesn't have that. Let's talk about a few diagnostic tips, because this is something I see a lot of mistakes. Did you know that the EVAP system normally will have a service port, and usually that service port is somewhere right here? What is the purpose of the service port? Well, you should use this to pull a vacuum through the system or send smoke through it if you want to run a diagnostic on the outside. Here's the problem though, and this is where the number one mistake is. I mean, this is the number one diagnostic mistake. So you're going to connect your smoke machine here. The smoke will go here. Oh, great, all great, wonderful. It's going to go here through the vent valve, and then all of a sudden your entire filler neck is just going to start bellowing with smoke. Oh my God, we have a bad gas cap. Go replace it, give the car back, or if it's your car, go about driving. Next day, Christmas trees on. We're back to square one. But why? I checked it. It shouldn't have done that. Yes, but did you close the vent? That's the problem. You actually, in this system that has a service port, and I actually removed it in the end, where I'll show you why, you're supposed to close the vent valve. So instead of the air going this way, instead of your smoke going this way, it's actually going to go, I'm going to use a different color, it's going to go this way, fill the canister, go through this valve, and fill your fuel tank, so you can actually see where it's leaking from. That's a very important thing, folks. In this system, you have to close your vent, and not just this system, all of them. That's why before you start diagnosis, identify your system, figure out where is your vent, because you must close it. This is mistake number one that I see. Mistake number two. What happens on cars that you don't have a service port? This is a good one, because they've figured out this is a horrible idea. This is too complicated. Why are we testing it backwards? Why don't you instead test it where the fresh air is? Because now when you disconnect this line and put your smoke machine here, here's what's going to happen. This is going to fill up is going to go through the canister, through the tank, everywhere, and then back through the purge line, and the purge valve is closed. Aren't you testing the system like that? This is a very important part. Using a smoke machine, let's talk about that. Not rocket science. It's literally a machine. You push a button, it starts making smoke, but where do you connect it? If you have a service port, you need to figure out what's going on with your venting, because you need to close your vent. And if you don't have a service port, don't just connect the purge valve and connect your smoke machine to it, because this is just going to leak right around the filler neck immediately. And why are we complicating diagnosis by closing the vent valve, and now we can't really check all the internals of this? Just connect it to fresh air. That's open. Don't have to do anything. Just connect it here. It'll pressurize the entire system. Fill it up all up with smoke. After 2-3 minutes, there's some smoke coming. Wait, my gas cap is loose, or this hose has a cut in it, or whatever the case may be. That is how 99% of folks that see EVAP codes start with. And that is a mistake. I'm going to tell you why. Do you have a leak code? Or do you just have an EVAP code? And then even if you have a leak code, if you have a purge valve that is stuck open internally, and you put smoke in the system, you're not going to see anything. Anything. If you leave it for 6 hours, you'll see it, but not anytime soon. Because this smoke is going to go here, go in the intake, go through the engine, and then start going through the exhaust. If there is a valve open, it's going to take forever to fill up the entire exhaust of the car. Then all of a sudden, after 6 hours, you see it bellowing out of the exhaust. That's what's going to happen. Instead, whenever you do diagnosis with a smoke machine, disconnect the purge valve from the engine. Don't disconnect it here, because then you open it. Disconnect it here, because then you're going to see smoke coming out of there if there is a leak in the purge valve. But better yet, this is too complicated to test the purge valve. Pull the purge valve, use a handheld vacuum pump, apply vacuum to it here. Does it hold? Because these are normally closed, so when they're off, they're closed. Does it hold? If it holds, pointless to do anything else, because it's fine. And in the old systems, you can check all the valves. The canister closed valve in the old system is a notorious one to leak. That one, same thing, vacuum pump. And when you're running your test, don't be afraid to clamp stuff. You're running your test, you're seeing that it's failing. Let's say it's like you're watching the readings on the scan tool, and you're graphing it, and you see that this one started to flatline before we reach the end. Just go and manually, like mechanically, clamp this line. If all of a sudden you clamp this line and this just goes down, well, I've got a problem here. But if you clamp it and nothing happens, go somewhere else. Clamp this one. See what happens. Clamp somewhere else. Whatever hoses you have access to, and you know that these are components, I know what they are. For example, if you're using this for a smoke machine, don't clamp it here, because now you isolated the entire system. You're not going to see anything. But don't be afraid of educated experiments, because that's how diagnosis is. But the best advice that I'm going to give you, next to the world's most confusing scribble now, because we kind of destroyed the whole image, you need to know what system do you have. And the way you identify that is, do you have a vacuum module? Do you have a canister closed valve by the oil filter, by the air filter? Do you have a fuel bypass, tank bypass valve, or like a pressure switching valve, they call it that? You need to identify what system do you have. Do you have a vacuum pump, or do you not have a vacuum pump? Because your route of diagnosis will change dramatically based on these. As soon as you identify your system, take a refresher. Even if you're a professional technician, I don't remember this stuff every single day. I work on so many things. You don't assume things and work off old memory. Refresher. It's all in the repair manual. Just open it. Okay, this is what I have. This is where this is. Okay. Fully aware, let's diagnose this. The thing after you determine completely, you got a refresher what system you have, where is my fresh air intake? Because that is going to throw your diagnosis off or is going to keep it on the right track. Then the difficulties with EVAP systems. Leaks are probably the most difficult thing to diagnose because it's very small leaks. You could be there for 2 hours waiting for a tiny little puff of smoke. And sometimes you get so tired you can't even see it. That's the challenge. I'm going to give you an old school Toyota kind of educational method. In addition to you smoking the system, see, when you introduce smoke into the system, you're actually raising the pressure a little bit. So when you suspect, you see a little area that's like rusty or a hose that looks strange, or even the seams of the canister, the fuel tank. When you see stuff that you suspect that this looks off, take water and soap, spray it. You see it bubble immediately because you are actively pressurizing this system. A little bit, but you will see it. Let's say, because the fuel pump also sits here and it has a gasket, you can access this and you have a mysterious leak. Go spray soap and water around it while you are introducing smoke. You'll see it bubbling if that's what's leaking. But you will never see smoke out of it because it's so minute amount that you just can't see it. Dark area, your eyes are not helping, but you can see bubbles. That's another way. Common things with this system, folks, is the owner of the car. That's the number one common problem with this system. You overfill this system, this vacuum pump gets one pebble in it, it's over. This orifice gets one pebble from that charcoal in the canister, it's over. This valve loves to get stuck with charcoals. This, in the newer cars, loves to get stuck with charcoals. Don't overfill these systems, folks. Especially these and all of them. Never top off your car. It clicks, we're done. Last thing I want to talk to you with diagnosis, because this is, I'm gonna erase all this and we're gonna draw a fresh one. So bear with me. Let's talk about the last diagnostic scenario, which will throw folks into a loop of question marks. What happens when you go to fill up your car? As soon as you put your pump in and you start pumping fuel, it clicks right away. You can't fill it. You have to go like little bit by little bit. What's going on there? Let's quickly rehash the onboard vapor recovery system. You're adding fuel here. As this fills up, your vapors here have nowhere to go. They start going here, your vapor. Opens this valve, goes through the canister. Now the canister also has air in it. If this air needs to go through the vent and kind of exit out. When your pump keeps clicking off, here's what's happening, and here's how here's how the little thing at the tank, at the gas station, figures out to click off. When it starts seeing a back pressure of vapor, it shuts off. That's how that works. So basically, when your nozzle keeps clicking off, it's getting a back pressure immediately of vapor. That could be to multiple reasons. One of them is this fresh air line has a little filter here, and that filter is clogged. Here's what's going to happen in this case. You're adding fuel here. This vapor has nowhere to go but back here, because this is completely clogged and stopped. Full with vapor and just sitting there. That's scenario number one. Scenario number two. This valve that is supposed to lift to allow the vapors through is stuck. Usually by fuel sitting here that pushed the charcoals up here and they're stuck here. That's scenario number two. Scenario number 3. The vent valve, we're talking about this system, any of the system, the valving inside of here or the piping is clogged with, you guessed it, charcoal. That's the only thing that clogs charcoal canisters. Here's what you do in this situation, because what I see folks do is very interesting. Usually just throw parts at it until it's fixed. The first thing you will do is locate this line right here, disconnect it, go to the gas station, try to fill it up. If it doesn't want to fill up, still, don't look anywhere else. You got a problem here. I'm going to give you a case that we've had. We had a 2020 Toyota 4Runner. Doesn't want to fill up. Went to the dealership. Within 5 minutes, dealership told him, oh, you need a canister. Bad. These canisters are very expensive or love to with a vacuum pump. Customer was not convinced because the diagnosis happened in 5 minutes. That's kind of too good to be true with EVAP systems. What we found is someone, probably a previous owner, somebody tried to steal fuel out of this car, and the fuel tank actually has a little flap here that when liquid fuel comes up, it actually pushes this closed. This is just the safety procedure. Someone tried to fish this, and this was bent up. So the only passage that was open is this. Fuel was literally backing up immediately and shutting it off. If you fuel it slowly, it'll start filling up. But do you know how we were able to determine that? We disconnected this hose. Immediately knew that there was nothing wrong with this because it was still doing the same thing. That is the first thing you do. If you disconnected this one and the problem went away, okay, great. We're going to move to the next thing, the fresh air. You're going to open this hose right here on the canister. Trace it, find where it is, open it up. If your problem goes away, usually the filter, but I would check this line. Where do we have a clog? Clog could be here at the filler neck. We've seen that. We've seen the air filter. We've seen this just is a broken line or a clogged line by something. If you disconnect this one and you still cannot fill this car up, and when you unplug this one, you can, then you need a canister because there's something internally clogged, and this is one unit. So there is some diagnosis involved. The difficult part of this diagnosis is sometimes this hose is extremely difficult to access. Like in the case of the 4Runner, it was not simple to access. This usually is very simple to access. So maybe try to disconnect this first, because if there's a problem in this valve, when you disconnect this, it doesn't happen. But if the problem is here, and you disconnect this first, which is easy, and all of a sudden you can fill it up, well, we bypassed getting to this first. Start with the easiest point to access for testing, not the hardest one. I hope that makes sense. Like when you start, like let's say valve checking on an old system, start with the ones under the hood. They're super accessible. Start checking those. What if those are faulty? And then you went spending all the time checking all the other ones. Well, these were right in front of you. Start with the easy stuff first, walk your way up. That's very important in diagnosis. Let's take a look at the components of a Lev 2 system with a vacuum pump. This is the most common type. You can see it in a lot of cars up to 2025. So let's talk about it. This does not have anything in the front but the purge valve. If you come see it right here, that's all we have. This is a purge valve. One line goes to the intake manifold, and one line goes all the way to the back of the car. That's all you have. You don't have anything else for the EVAP here. Let's talk about the charcoal canister. Unfortunately, this car, this is a 2012 Camry, it's not very visible, but I want you to see how things have gotten so much better. I'm going to put a small clip of us talking about the late type intrusive system on the Avalon. That looks like a giant mess in the back. Compared to today's stuff, Look at this. It's going to be a little hard to show you, but if you look right here, there's a charcoal canister. You notice that there's no 17 million hoses and all kinds of stuff connected to it. Nothing. That hose that you're seeing right here, that's for the onboard vapor recovery system. So when you fuel up this car, this is the hose that's going to push vapors into the canister when you refuel. So this is a very accessible hose. That's hose number 1 on the canister. And then if we look on this side, you have another pipe that runs here and it has a hose. It's hard to see it, but that comes from the purge. That's hose number 2. Hose number 3, this one. That's your fresh line. The filter on this one is up in this area. It's hard to see it with it assembled, but this is your fresh line. There's one connector on the charcoal canister, and that's it. That's all you have. You don't have multiple valves and multiple hoses and nothing. This is all you have. You have your purge, you have your fuel tank connection for the fuel recovery, for fuel vapor recovery, and then you have your fresh air. If you are testing a system like this that doesn't have a valve, the test valve in the front, this is where you test it from. Wherever this connects, that's where you smoke it. This is important. This charcoal canister, do you see why they went with it? Some folks dislike this because it is expensive to replace because it has so much in it. But it's completely simplified the cars. Let me do one more comparison. Here's the old stuff, the canister, and here's the new stuff. Big difference. I'd rather have the late stuff, the new stuff, because it's very simple. Everything is inside. And just as a bonus, this is a 1991 Toyota Land Cruiser. This is actually not even on the map of EVAP systems. This is the beginning. This is the 80s stuff. This car has such a rudimentary EVAP system that doesn't do anything. Let's just clarify. Let's take a look at it. This is a charcoal canister. It's under the hood. 2 lines. This line goes to the fuel tank, pulls the vapors, hopefully. This one goes to the purge valve, right here. That's your purge valve right here. Now this is a mechanical valve. This is not an electronic valve. This one, this other hose, big hose, goes to the intake manifold. This little vacuum hose, if you chase it all the way around the entire engine, it actually ends up right here. This is a thermal vacuum switch. This is your thermostat housing. When the car fully warms up and the thermostat housing is hot, this opens a passage. One line is vacuum, one line is just goes right to that valve. When you supply vacuum to that valve, it opens the passage and we purge. That's how basic things were, but some folks will say, yeah, I wish we would go back to this. Yeah, folks, but this didn't work. This didn't do anything. I mean, basically, this is a complication for nothing. Because if you follow these vacuum hoses to this side, when we have this vacuum hoses like this, and even a tiny little cut in one of these, and we have all kinds of problems, that's when we have problems. That's why this system simply didn't work. You could remove it out of the car and does absolutely nothing because it just simply didn't work. If it worked, great, but it doesn't. That's the problem. So now we have gotten everything about the evaporative emission system. You know how they started, how they kind of progressed over time, how to diagnose them. Folks, the last advice I will leave you with when it comes to evaporative emission systems, the first one is you must do a refresher before you start diagnosing them. You may have an evaporative emission system today, you dealt with it, then 5 years later you have another one. On a DIY level especially, you need to do a refresher. First, identify what system you have. First, remind yourself how that system works, then start diagnosis. With evaporative emission systems, diagnosis can be very frustrating, especially with leaks. Patience is very important. Proper procedure on how to test things starts with identifying what type you have, then progressing through it. That is the most important part in evaporative system diagnosis. Calm. That's all I'll tell you. Folks, I hope this video series have helped you kind of understand the mysterious world of evaporative emission systems, because they can be simple to diagnose if you know what you are looking at, or they can be the biggest nightmare. There's no other way to say it. They can be very difficult and frustrating to diagnose. But I hope this video and the previous one helps you understand it better and diagnose it easier. Folks, I hope this video is helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. Until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.